Earlier today, we got our first look at franchise mode inside of Madden 26. EA and other content creators have hyped this up as the biggest change to Madden franchise over the last decade, which maybe could be true if everything here is executed correctly. That's a big ask, though. Let's take a look at all the changes. There's a lot more customization with creating your coach. There's an offensive guru, a defensive guru, those two being pretty self-explanatory, and then a development wizard who's a little bit more well-rounded but does not specialize on either side of the ball. Dan Campbell being listed here, I feel like, is a pretty good example. There's a lot more customization for your coaches with over 200 faces and 30,000 combinations in terms of clothing, which may not be the biggest deal. It's not necessarily going to make your franchise mode better, but it's a small positive addition. Let's talk about the meat and potatoes, though, now. Weekly strategy, there's a lot more user control, and I feel like it's a lot more based on realism. We'll start with game day and season abilities. You'll have a lot more control in terms of which aspect of your team you want to focus on going into an individual matchup with your opponent. I feel like the strategy behind it, there's going to be a lot more impact in terms of how your team ends up performing, which is a good thing. That's how it should be. I think one of the biggest focuses of franchise mode this year is making coaching feel a lot more authentic while still obviously being in a video game. Let's talk about some of these new abilities. They completely overhauled how you manage your staff. There's tier and ability progression. You can make your abilities progress in terms of your upgrade goals and your staff points, which seems to be a much more advanced version of what we've had in the last few years. So it seems like you're going to have a lot more control and input, again, on your team's coaching style. The weekly strategy portion of franchise mode has also been completely redesigned, again, with a focus in coaching abilities. Where your coach's strength is, say you pick the offensive guru, there's going to be more specific focus in your weekly strategy on the offensive side of the ball, which will probably help your offense, but may limit how your defense performs in the game. There's 3 different types of loadouts: the staff loadout, play sheet loadout, and trainer loadout. We'll be talking a lot more about the play sheets and trainers in a little bit. Coordinators finally matter. Much like in college football 26, it seems like who you hire as a coordinator is very important. Especially, again, let's say you're an offensive coach, your defensive coordinator is really going to matter. And when those guys potentially leave for other job opportunities, that's going to hurt you a little bit. Look at the Lions, for example, losing both Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn. Now, I think Dan Campbell is much more in tune with the game plan on both sides of the ball than people realize, and because of that, I think Detroit's probably going to be fine. Dan Campbell's a super genius that probably doesn't get enough credit, but that's not really the point. The point is that even if you lose your coordinators, you can potentially still rebound if you're smart about it. What I'm really intrigued by, they mentioned this in one of the trailers earlier, is the opposing coach DNA and real-time coaching AI. Basically, the other teams will also game plan based around your team. Say your team excels at running the football, then the other team may plan accordingly. They may keep more guys in the box than they would otherwise. I'm fascinated to see how this ends up working, and if EA executed this well, I think this is going to be sick. Something I hinted at earlier was the play sheets. EA wanted to make all these coaches feel authentic. They added a bunch of new plays, a bunch of new schemes, a bunch of new formations into the game, and this is exactly how they are going to do it. Overall, I think this is obviously a very good addition because now each team is going to feel like themselves. Playing against, say, the Kansas City Chiefs with Andy Reid's unique play designs is going to feel a lot more like playing against or playing as the Kansas City Chiefs. Look at all the pre-snap motion you see in some of these Shanahan schemes, like the Miami Dolphins with Mike McDaniel, for instance. That's going to be showcased a lot more in the game, whether you're playing as or against the Miami Dolphins. The play sheets are organized by formation, and depending on which play sheet you use for a specific play, certain players may go up in certain attributes. So again, the coach that you pick and how good your coach is will matter. Some of the better coaches, like Andy Reid, are probably going to have their players go up because of his influence. Managing your staff with abilities extending to your coordinators and trainers, managing your staff will never be more important than it is this year. If your current staff does not match the vision for your franchise, there's the coaching carousel, whether it's during the season or in the off-season, where you can hire new coordinators and trainers who may better fit the guys you had previously or replace certain coordinators who are getting better jobs. Player traits. They went into a lot more detail about this in some of the previous trailers, but there's a lot more traits for players. We talked about the quarterback DNA in the past, and these will extend into the draft classes, which I'm very happy they included that, and it's not just for the current players who are already in the league. I think that's a pretty big deal that the rookies that we draft will also feel unique and authentic. Wear and tear. This has been added to Madden after it was in college football last year. It seems a lot more advanced than what we had last year, though, which I think is a good thing. The biggest takeaway I got from watching the trailer is that you're going to have to make a lot of decisions based on how healthy players are, which is exactly how it is in the NFL. Players may be questionable throughout the week, they may be doubtful, they may be probable, and we're now going to see those player statuses, and you as the coach are going to have to make certain decisions. Maybe keep a guy out for an extra week, even if they're somewhat healthy, or take the risk. Play them, have your better players on the field, but they also may suffer a long-term injury that keeps them out of the lineup for a while. You can customize your practice settings based on, again, injuries and whatnot, which has kind of been in the game in the past, so that's not entirely new. And much of these injury decisions are based on the new trainers that are going to be making decisions, all of whom have trainer abilities. Some trainers are going to be better than others, which means your players are more likely to recover faster and more efficiently, just like coach abilities, which I think is really cool. I love that there's now going to be decision-making in terms of keeping players healthy. The loadout and the user interface looks pretty similar to last year. The first thing they mentioned in the gridiron notes is that going through menus is going to be quicker, though, so that's a win. Everybody loves it when it's more user-friendly. Let's talk about managing your reputation as the coach. It seems like press conferences and whatnot are back from last year. I don't think they did a good job at all of executing it a year ago. It does seem like what you say will have more of an impact in terms of what the GM and the owner thinks of you, what the fan base thinks of you, what the players think of you, and that can be the difference between keeping a job during a bad season or getting fired. Now, I'm still a little hesitant to see how this works because much of this was supposed to be the big addition last year, and again, I don't think they did a good job of executing it whatsoever. It seems improved, and the details seem better than what we were given last year, but this is more so something that I want to wait and see how it looks. But if it's executed well, then I think this could be good because how you interact with the media as a coach definitely impacts how everybody across the league thinks of you. Football weather. We've talked about this in the past as well. They included a short blurb in the franchise notes here, but as we know, weather is going to be more important than ever. We're going to see more impacts with snow, rain, wind, hot climates, cold climates, and your players will be affected as such. Certain teams who play in the South, like the LA teams, the Dolphins, the Bucks, the Jaguars, they're going to be warm weather teams. But then the teams who play in the Midwest, like the Bears, the Bills, the Browns, they're going to be cold weather teams. I'm curious to see how they execute that. Broadcast packages. This I'm very excited about. Thursday night, Sunday night, and Monday night games will all feel authentic. In previous Maddens, they just felt like another game that happened to be at night. But now they all have their own broadcast and presentation displays. They all have their own score bugs. And I think all of the score bugs look really good. Some years in Madden, the score bugs don't look good, but I think they went 4 for 4. And what I like this year is that with the Thursday night, Sunday night, and Monday night games, they look kind of similar to the score bugs we get in real life. Not exactly the same. I doubt that EA is allowed to take those from, ESPN and NBC and Amazon, but they look kind of similar, and they all look good, in my opinion, which I think is a pretty big deal. I'm also excited to see the new halftime and weekly recap shows hosted by none other than the great Scott Hanson. Now, I'll give myself a pat on the back because, of course, I've been doing similar halftime shows in the past on previous Maddens, but it seems like these are going to be even better. And would you rather listen to me or Scott Hanson? I would probably pick Scott Hanson myself. I'm more excited, though, about the weekly recaps. I think those are going to be even cooler because we're going to get a real gauge of what's going on around the league, hopefully with highlights as well, much like the halftime show. So I think these two additions might be the coolest thing added to franchise mode. I'm excited to see how these are implemented, and if they're used well, I certainly will be using them on my franchises here on YouTube. Let's talk about some of this core improvements that were shown in the gridiron notes. They didn't go over these in the trailer, but I think these are some of the most important things that are being added to the mode this year. Draft logic. It seems like teams are going to be smarter with their draft decisions. I feel like we hear this every year, and it's not the case, though, so I'm not going to get my hopes up. But hopefully this is true. New prospect generators. As I mentioned earlier, prospects are going to get traits. Prospects are going to be more unique, and we're going to see all of the new positions, including Sam and Will linebackers, nose tackles, gadget players, etc. Retirement logic. It seems like retirement is going to be smarter. Not that I've really had a big issue with when players retire in the past, but it seems like guys who are continuously playing well into their 30s are going to stick around longer, which is good. Progression and regression appears to have improved as well. As you guys know, I like to make my own sliders at the beginning of the year to where this isn't really an issue. But I think the biggest thing they talk about here is development trait regression, which I've always kept off because I feel like it's broken. But if it's not broken, then maybe I'll keep it on this year. Game and simulation stats. This might be the number one thing that I'm excited about this year. It seems like simulation logic is better. Thank God. I have been waiting for this forever. Playbooks will have minimal impact in terms of how your team performs, which is how it should be. In previous Maddens, if you pick a good playbook, your team's going to do well in the sim. I think EA's gotten better about this, though, in recent years, so I do believe that this is not like the draft logic where it's kind of a farce or an empty promise. Rather, I feel like we are going to see strides in terms of simulation logic because they've gotten better about it compared to, say, Madden 25 versus, like, Madden 22. But hopefully we take another step up. It's less about playbooks and more about player ratings, and that the stats, especially the run game, feels a lot more realistic. I think rushing in simulation is just horrible. There are too many starters who have their longest run of the year is like 10 yards. If you have a 90 overall back or better, your run game is going to be good. Anything less, your running game is probably going to suck. So while it's good that it's ratings dependent, I felt like it was always too ratings dependent. But then look at receivers. You'll have 75 overall guys catching 1,400 yards a year in the right playbook, lining up in the slot. But you'll see too many guys in the 90s who don't perform. So on the inverse, hopefully ratings matter a lot more, say at the wide receiver and the offensive line positions as well. So that's just about going to wrap it up. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Overall, I think there are some pretty positive additions to the mode this year. I'm curious to see how they are all implemented before I really make judgment. But if everything is executed well, I think we could be looking at a pretty fun year of Madden franchise. Make sure to leave a like. Make sure to subscribe to the channel if you are new for more Madden 26 content. Peace out.